Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, jazakumullah khairan for turning up early to our fortnightly usrah. Inshallah, today is going to be an interesting one. A little diversion to what we usually discuss, but this is also very relevant as we've advertised. Inshallah, we'll wait for a few more minutes for people to join and then we'll make a start. Jazakumullah khairan. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Welcome once again to another edition of our fortnightly usrah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless this gathering and count it among the gathering of remembrance, in which He promised that those who are within those gatherings will be the people of Jannah and He will safeguard them from the fire. Amen. So as we've advertised, today we would be having a health talk rather than our usual, um, um, you know, reminders, Islamic reminders. As we know, Islam is a complete religion that deals with all aspects of our life. So it's not out of place if we say this usra, we use it to talk about health talk or things that has to do with our daily life. Previously, we'll talk about things that has to do with our akhirah. And today, inshallah, we'll be talking about things that has to do with our daily life, our health, inshallah. So the topic is one, as they would say, the elephant in the room, that is becoming very, very, very common. I mean, it's hardly would you find somebody who does not know someone who has cancer or who either close person, somebody he knows about or he heard about. Cancer is a very, very common health condition that unfortunately we still don't have cure for most of them. So I think it's very, very important that we talk about what could cause cancer. How can we prevent it as human beings? Obviously, we do as much as we can, and whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings upon us, He brings it upon us. So, inshallah, today we would have with us, alhamdulillah, one of our doctors, in-house doctors, who is a specialist in the field of cancer. Obviously, cancer is a very broad topic, so I'm sure it's just going to give us an overview. Maybe, inshallah, in the future sessions, we specifically talk about some other aspect of cancer. As the topic we've advertised will be cancer, causes, and prevention, inshallah. So we have with us Dr. Ridwan Ahmed, who is a medical doctor. He has a master's in philosophy in cancer science. He's a fellow of the Medical College of Radiologists, specializes in radiation and clinical oncology from Nigeria. He's also a member of the Royal College of Radiologists in the UK. He currently works as a senior clinical fellow as an oncologist, a clinical oncologist at Mount Vernon Cancer Center in Northwood here in the UK. So inshallah, we are really, really honored to have with us Dr. Ridwan talking about cancer. Inshallah, at the end of it, we would have an opportunity for people to ask questions, specific questions, whatever that you're not too sure about in terms of the treatment. You have the right person right in front of you where you can ask and then clarify whatever that's out there. I know there are a lot of myths out there. So this session and inshallah several other sessions that we'll do in the future with the aim of demystifying all those myths, inshallah, and trying to clarify it in a very, very professional and more straightforward way, inshallah. So without much ado, I will hand over to Dr. Ridwan to give us his presentation, and afterwards, inshallah, we would all have the opportunity to ask questions as the case may be. Bismillah, Dr. Ridwan. We can't hear you, Dr. Ridwan, if you're talking.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Can you hear me now? بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى أهله وأصحابه وسلم وبعد. أيها الإخوان السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. It's a great pleasure to be here this evening to discuss the topic cancer causes and prevention. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for me to deliver and also make it easy for us to understand it much better than the way I would have delivered it, inshallah. Okay, so if you're talking about cancers, it actually represents, the meaning of cancer is the malignant transformation of cells within the human body. As humans, we have several organs that make up our bodies. So we have the liver, we have the kidneys, we have the lungs, we have our brain, our heart, and so on and so forth. So all these are various organs in our body. Now, if we cast our mind back to elementary biology, we'll recall that when we were being taught about formation of systems, organ systems in humans, they will tell us that you have cells, a collection of cells will form tissues, collection of tissues will form organs, and collection of organs would form a body system. So in the human body, we have various systems. The digestive system, which helps us to digest the food we eat, and also make us to benefit from the nutrients that are present in those foods. Then we have the excretory system, that, our kidneys, forms an essential component on, and also our skin, which is the largest organ within the human body. So all of these organs, their basic components is cell. So when we say cancer represents a disease that happens when one of those cells, when they start behaving abnormally. I'm not sure why my slide is hanging. Okay, sorry, give me a sec. Let me stop sharing.
Share again.
Yeah, okay. Now, so when we are talking about cancer, it represents abnormal, uncontrolled growth of cells within the body. Ordinarily, the cells within our body, they are supposed to grow from time to time. And that is why the same way we are when we were 2 years old or 5 years old is not the same way that we are right now when we have become adults. So what that means is that we have grown with time. So the cells within our bodies are also growing with us. Now, these cells, they actually, what causes their growth? Of course, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is a divine creator of us, is behind all this. But the science behind that is that our body shares information within itself. All these cells, they share information, and those information are transmitted from one cell to the other. To the extent that within a cell, this information is also being passed, from outside the cell to inside the cell to the basic component of a cell, which is the DNA, that actually, instruct the cell to start dividing or also stop dividing. Now, when we have abnormal or uncontrolled growth of cells, this is what we mean by cancer. It is not just a single disease. There are over 200 types of cancer within the body. And there is no part of the body that cancer cannot affect. It's only very exceptional cells or tissues within the body that cancer cannot affect. And such is the human lungs, for example. Other than that, most other organs within the body can be affected by cancer. Talk about the eyes, talk about the brain, talk about the oral cavity, which the tongue, the gums, are part of. Talk about the skin, the breasts, our bowels, which is, the gastrointestinal system, the prostate, the uterus, the cervix, name it, any organ, within the body, can be affected. Now, these abnormal cells, what usually happens to them is that there's really no self-destruction when they become old. Ordinarily, cells within the body, when they become old, they die off, and the body get rid of them. However, for cancer cells, they do not become old. They continue to replicate in what we call replicative immortality, which is one of the characteristics of cancer cells. And they begin to outgrow normal LD cells within the body. So you can imagine how that how that will spell out. You have a cell which has it has outgrown its existence. It's supposed to grow at a particular point and stop growing and then die off, either through process of necrosis or other cell death types, and it doesn't die and continues to replicate. What happens is that the normal LD cells that are surrounding such a tissue or such a organ, there will be problems for those cells because you now have an abnormal cells which is not yielding to what the body is telling it to do. The body is telling it to stop growing. However, no, it is not listening to the body again. It continues to grow and grow and grow in an abnormal way. Now, it is said that 1 in 3 individuals is going to come down with cancer in the lifetime. This is statistics, that about 10 years ago when it was being said, we were thinking that, oh, this statistics is just far-fetched, but we're actually coming to that now. It's much more rampant than we think, such that the global cancer estimates of year 2020 stated that over 19.3 million new cancer cases is what we have, globally all over the world. And we have over 10 million people, dying from cancer. Also is that out of these, cancer deaths, 1 out of 4 of those deaths are from developed countries, whereas most of the other ones are, from developing nations. If we are to compare UK and Nigeria, for example, the population of the UK in 2014 is 65 million. It is estimated by the year 2035, this number is going to rise to about 73 million. Now, in 2014, we had about 360,000 cases of cancer in the UK, whereas within 2 years ago and last year, that number has risen to close to 400 cases. It is not growing very fast because lots of efforts are being put into the prevention and early diagnosis of cancer, which is where the cure of cancer lie, in the modern time. We are still going to talk about all of that in a moment. Whereas in the year 2035, it is estimated that number will go up much more than that. However, if you look at the trend for developing countries, Nigeria, for example, we have, of course, Nigerian population is about close to 4 times, what we have in the UK. We have over 2 million cases of cancer in Nigeria, and over 200,000 people will die of cancer in Nigeria. So looking at it, I said last year or 2 years ago, in the UK, we have about 387,000, cancer cases diagnosed. And out of those ones, we have, about 160,000 of them are dying from cancer. But look at the number, from Nigeria, you can see that it's staggering. And this number is actually from last year. The current estimation, I do not have that yet, but I know the cases are not abating. It's actually going up. Now, when we talk about preventable cancers, it is not all cancers that can be prevented, and this is alarming. However, we have about a third or half of cancer cases can actually, be prevented, and it is those ones that we should be interested in. Another point I wanted to make is that if you're talking about cancers, it is not just a disease, of the affluent. In the past, we used to say, it is people who are rich, the developed countries are the ones, that have cancers. That is not true, because now we have more cancer cases being reported from developing countries. The other thing is that it is not a disease of the old alone. Cancer can affect, any age. We have childhood cancers, a lot of them, and we also have, adult cancers. Majority of the cancer cases that most of us would have heard about are the ones that happen in adults. But even children can also have cancers. And when I'm talking about children, from birth till age 16, they can also come down, with various forms of cancers. Now, we're talking about those cancers, like I've said, about close to half of cancer cases are preventable. Why is it that some cancers are not preventable? This is what this slide is trying to explain to us. The various factors, that cause cancers are divided into two. We have the ones that we call intrinsic risk factors, and we have the non-intrinsic risk factors. So for the intrinsic risk factors, they are the ones that we do not really have power over them. So like I said, we have cells, which make up different organs within our body. And these cells, they all replicate. They replicate within our body. Take the circulatory system, for example, our blood system. Do you know that our blood, the blood that makes up, our body, in an adult, for example, we have up to, 5 liters of blood, within our body. Now, this amount of blood is such that every 3 months, the life cycle of the red blood cell is 120 days. So what that implies is that if a new blood cell is produced today, for example, the red blood cells are actually made in the long bone marrow of the body, the sternum, our humerus, the bones of our upper limb. These are where, these are red blood cells are being produced from within the body. Now, these red cells, when new ones are produced, if new ones are produced today, for example, in the next 120 days, those ones will die off and new ones are produced again. So which means that a red cell, for example, has a life cycle of 120 days. Now, and this is why it is advised that we should, donate blood as much as we can, at least once or twice in a year. It is very, very good, for our health, especially the men among us. Now imagine a red cell which has been produced today is supposed to die off in 120 days time, and after 120 days, it doesn't stop. It still continues to grow and grow. That is what will lead to a certain form of cancer that we call hematologic malignancy or a blood cancer, which can be any type. There are different types of those ones. Now, for this to happen, it is possible that in relaying information within the body that, this cell, you have to stop dividing, the particular cell gets the information wrong, and then it doesn't, stop dividing. It continues to replicate continuously. So this is what we call intrinsic risk factors. These are factors that are beyond what we can control. It just happens. We do not have control over it. The other one is the non-intrinsic risk factors, which are factors that are within our control, that we can actually influence, sort of. And those ones are also divided into two. We have the endogenous risk factors and the exogenous risk factors. So, and these are the factors that are listed in this group. The exogenous risk factors include radiation, chemical carcinogens, tumor-causing viruses, bad lifestyle such as smoking, lack of exercise, nutrient imbalance, and so on. Whereas the endogenous risk factors are, aging. As we age, we are, predisposed to some certain types of cancers. Prostate cancer, for example, occurs, more in men who are older, especially Afro-Caribbean men. We have higher risk factors for developing prostate cancer. Then genetic susceptibility in some families, possibly if somebody has had cancer before, maybe the elderly brother or sister of a particular person, or the great grandfather or great grandmother, even though they are 2 generations away, it may be a risk factor. And, we need to, once we have that history, we need to, the offspring of such individuals need to be careful, or it may be, the relatives, they need to be careful. Then hormones, growth factors, and all that. So these are, all the risk factors. Now, these causes of cancers that I was talking about, the International Agency for Research and Control of Cancer, called IAC, they actually gave a rough guide of what we call carcinogens. Carcinogens are agents which have been implicated in one way or the other in the development of cancer. That is, those agents can, actually lead to the causation of cancers. Now, these agents are actually ranked in order of how they can predispose, how they can predispose individuals to cancer. So we have the group 1, which are the confirmed carcinogens. So in the group 1 agents are such that it's been confirmed that these ones can actually lead to cancer if individuals continue to expose themselves to those agents. And what are those agents? Smoking. So we now we know. In the past, there were doubts. In the 50s, 60s, early 70s, there were doubts. But now we know that smoking of cigarettes can actually cause cancer. Lung cancer, for example, smoking of cigarettes has been implicated as one of the causes of lung cancer. Also is the cancers of head and neck, the oral cavity or the oropharynx. So not just smoking of cigarettes. If that is combined with alcohol consumption, then the risk of development of cancers of the oropharynx, cancers of the mouth and the throat, the risk is very, very high. Another carcinogenic agent which has been confirmed to be carcinogenic, that is, it can lead to the causation of cancer, are what we call solar radiation. It's common practices in this part of the world, for people to say, oh, I need to get, some sunlight. If we are going to do that, I know, of course, each time we have sunlight, because of, the typical weather that we have in this country, for example, you are happy, oh, the sun is out. But to our good, we should endeavor to use, creams that, have what we call UV, creams that can absorb ultraviolet in the radiations of the sun. And such creams are actually, they are present in the market. What they do is that they actually screen the harmful components, of the solar rays that can lead to the development of skin cancer, for example. The other thing which, has been highlighted here is processed meat. Now we know that processed meat has a link to the development of colorectal cancer, cancer of the bowel, of our a large intestine. Now, the other groups, group 2A, 2B, group 3, the other groups are not, confirmed carcinogenic, but they've been ranked in the order. So 2A are the ones that are probably carcinogenic, which means that, well, there are limited evidence, to confirm that they probably would cause cancer in human beings. And examples of those ones are emissions, from very high temperature, from vehicles, from generator fumes in Nigeria, for example. Some people are speculating that because of the erratic power supply, it may be responsible, for the causation of the very few lung cancer cases that are springing up in Nigeria. Also is frying, steroids, exposure, working in hairdressing, red meat. Well, in some cases, some people would say these are probably carcinogenic, that we don't have the evidences we have right now is still not sufficient to say these agents would cause cancer. Then we have the group 2B, which are possibly carcinogenic, coffee, gasoline, engine exhaust, welding fumes, pickled vegetables, possibly carcinogenic, but it's not really sure. And the other ones are what we can see on the screen because of time. So the modifiable causes, which I mentioned in the second slide, are what are listed on this image we are seeing right now. Tobacco, like you said, it's linked to several cancers in the body, foremost of which is lung cancers, cancers of the head and neck, and cancers of the bowel. Also is body fatness, ultraviolet radiation, especially from the sun, which I talked about, can lead to skin cancers in some cases. Physical inactivity, not getting ourselves to be active, just living a sedentary lifestyle, is being implicated as one of those things that, if we can adjust, may cut the risk of our contraction of cancers down. Salt consumption also, because of the link between that and hypertension, for example, and other diseases within the body. Alcohol, human papillomavirus infections. This is closely related to. Is now known as cervical cancer, which is very common, especially in developing countries. Black women, much more affected. This has been linked to human papillomavirus infections. Processed meat, which we talked about, ionizing radiation, possibly somebody who has had treatment for cancer before. There's a risk that that person may have another cancer, especially in the area that was treated, even though the risk may be very low, but the person has to be careful. Oral contraceptives, breastfeeding. Breastfeeding, well, is protective. In breast cancer, for example, we now know that women who have breastfeed their children for a longer period of time, can actually cut down their risk of development of breast cancer. H. pylori, Helicobacter pylori infection, which is a bacterial infection, is closely linked to the development of gastric cancers. Then hepatitis B and C infections, which have been implicated in hepatocellular carcinoma, which is a cancer of the liver. Now, what are the things that when we see within our body, we should be alarmed? These are, in quotes, called alarmed, symptoms and signs that when we are noticing them, we shouldn't be complacent. We should possibly feel that, maybe something is wrong. We need to be alert. Foremost among them is when we have, a lump, within the breast. This is especially for our ladies. You notice a lump within your breast, or it may not be a lump, it may be a discharge, it may be, skin changes, which has not been there before. This is not something we should keep quiet, on. We should immediately talk to our GP to check us out. Also, is changes in our bowel habits. What this means is that some of us, we defecate every 3 days, some people every 2 days, some people once a day. You now notice that now you're going, before you would go once in 2 days, now you're going once in 4 days. And each time you go, you notice that you have very watery and alternating watery and constipatory, stool. And it's now becoming, frequent. Then we shouldn't keep quiet. We should speak to our doctor. It could just be the early sign that we did not, that we wouldn't have picked up. Bloating, you are just feeling very bloated. This is especially true for ovarian cancers, for example, which is also common in the UK among women. Bloating may just be one of the very early signs, of it. Some of us will say, I'm having epigastric discomfort, epigastric pain, heartburn, but I'm using antacids. After I use antacids to go. If it is not something you've been having before, it just started all of a sudden, then it's not something you should keep quiet about. You may need to be, checked out. Also, it's unexplained weight loss. You just notice that, you're losing weight. You used to weigh 70 kilograms before, and now the weight is just going down, losing up to 4 or 5 kilograms, monthly. Is not something we should keep quiet about. Also, is bleeding. Of course, you notice it may be from any part of the body that is unusual, then we should, ring up the GP. For women, for example, bleeding in old women who are above 55 years of age, 50 years of age, you've stopped, doing your menses. You don't see blood again, and then all of a sudden, you notice that you are seeing blood again. Then it is not something we should keep quiet about. It may be a sign of a uterine cancer, endometrial cancer, because it is commoner among elderly women. So these are the major. Aside from this, if you notice, within your body any swelling or lump, either on yourself or your spouse, or even on your child, something that has not that wasn't there before. Just notice that change. We shouldn't keep quiet about it. Let it be checked out. Eventually, it may turn out to be something benign. For example, the lump I talked about, most of them would end up being benign lumps, which removal alone is fine. It doesn't mean they are cancers, and that is why they are said to be benign. But if once they are taken out, they will be checked up within the laboratory under the microscope. The pathology would look at them, look at the cells. Based on the characteristics of the cell, they can tell if the cancer has, if the cell has a cancer behavior or not. And that is why it is very important that we get ourselves checked out. So what are the common cancers that we have in our clime? For both male and females, the commonest cancer is actually breast cancer is the commonest. However, it is common. It is much more common among women. Over 95% of breast cancer cases are found in women, whereas only less than 5% of cases are found among men. So that implies that men can also have breast cancers. So we shouldn't think, oh, no, breast cancer. No, men can also, come down with breast cancer. So in the UK, the commonest cancers are breast cancer, followed by lung, followed by colorectal. And when we are talking about this, we're talking about non-melanoma, that is non-skin skin cancers. Skin cancers are also very, very common within the UK. So, but in the females, breast cancer is, like I said, is the commonest cancers among females. Within the UK, cervical cancer is not the next among females. It is actually followed by endometrial cancer. However, I have put cervical cancer here because it is commoner in Nigeria. In fact, in Nigeria, if you're talking about commonest cancers in females, breast and cervical cancers, you won't talk about endometrial and ovarian cancers. They are also there, but they are not as common as cervical cancer. And that is why I'm going to talk about it. It's been found out that, especially for most of us who are immigrants, we normally take up the cancer statistics of the place that we are migrating to. For example, in Nigeria, we said, oh, the commonest cancers is breast and cervical cancer. In the UK, it's breast and endometrial, ovarian. Because we are now here, give it 5, 10, 15 years, we also would assume the cancer statistics of that new place. Let me explain further. In the Japanese, for example, in the world, it is known that they have the highest number of cases of stomach cancers, gastric cancers. People who have highest number of that they are in Japan. They are the Japanese. Now, these Japanese, it is found out that when most of them, some of them that will migrate to the US, for example, they take up the cancer statistics of that place so that, the gastric cancers among them is not as high as, it was back home in their country. We still do not know, what causes this in cancer epidemiology. So, yeah, and then in male, prostate cancer is the commonest. And like I said, it is much more common among us. Of course, male, we have prostate gland. Prostate gland is only found in males. It is not found in females. And that is why it is the commonest cancer among males. And not just any male, aging men who are becoming older, especially African men. They have the highest risks of development of prostate cancer. And, this figure has, shown among the men and women, these are leading cancers that I talked about. Now, let's pick these cancers one after the other and briefly talk on them and see what we can do. for breast cancer, for example, the most important risk factor for developing breast cancer is being a female. So, like I said, if you're a female, you have the chances between a male and a female having breast cancer is 95% for a female compared to a male, which is 3 to 5%. So, and that is why, as women, we need to be on the lookout, for our breasts. For those of us who have, positive family history, either our parents or our sisters, our relatives, our direct relatives or cousins, or if we've had, any positive family history, then we should be on the lookout and not play with checking ourselves. Also, is a menstrual pattern. It is said that those ladies who actually have higher exposure, to estrogen stimulation, that is, those of them who have early menses. They started their menses very early. We call it menarche, early menarche, and late menopause. Those women who start menstruation maybe from the age of about 6 or 7, and then finishing their menses around maybe 51, 52, 53. That is a very long time. The risk of development of breast cancer is actually higher in those ones compared to somebody who actually has late menarche, maybe starting the menses around maybe 11 or 12 or 13, and then finishing it around maybe early 40s, maybe 45, 46, 47. Delay in childbirth is also has been identified as a risk. People who do not start early may be predisposed. Obesity, having excessive weight, and it's not just weight, because it's difficult to just look at somebody and say, oh, you have weight. We don't look at weight in isolation. We look at weight and compare with height. And how we do this is checking the person's, we call it BMI, body mass index. Now, none of us can calculate it. How we do this is our weight in kilograms. We divide this by our height in meters. So, for example, my weight is 71 kilograms. My height is 1.67 meters. So if I want to calculate my BMI, all I would say is 70 divided by 1.7 squared. So weight divided by height squared. So that gives us our body mass index. Now, weight divided by the square of our height. Now, if you calculate this for yourself, and the normal BMI is between 18 and 25. So if your BMI, kilograms per meter squared, if your BMI is between 26 and 30, you're said to be overweight. Now, if your BMI, body mass index, is above 30, say 31, 32, 33, is between 31 and 35 is said to be mild obesity. This, you are obese. Between 36 and 40 is said to be moderate obesity, and above 40 kilograms per meter squared is said to be morbid obesity. So above 30 is what we should aim not to even attain. I'm not saying that 26 to 30 is a good one, no, because that is overweight. So we should strive as much as possible that our weight is commensurate to our height. And if it is not, if our BMI is reading 27, 28, that is still fine, but we can do better to make sure it falls within that healthy range. Otherwise, it is a recipe for various kinds of diseases, not just cancer, heart problems, many heart conditions have been associated with this. as well as other health conditions that can happen. Also, is lack of physical activity has been found to be closely related to the development of cancers. Then hormone replacement therapies, for example, in women who have become menopausal, and because of the fact that they're experiencing some forms of maybe hot flushes, or they're having some kind of joint and bony pains, mood swings, and all of that. Sometimes they are prescribed with hormone replacement therapy. It's been found out that this can also be linked to the development of breast cancer. So if you are prescribed with one, I'm not saying that we are going to have it. We shouldn't just start a medication. I think we need to start using this and start using it without discussing with an health professional. It's actually not good at all. So what are the preventive measures for breast cancers? Early detection actually matters a lot. It matters a lot. And how do we detect breast cancer early? Is by what we call SBE, self-breast examination. Very, very important. If we find anything on self-breast examination, I'm going to come to self-breast examination in a moment, then we need to alert our GP. He would, call us to do what we call triple assessment. So triple assessment involves examining us, physical examination, doing imaging with either ultrasound most times, or even mammography. And then if we notice something, then we also send that for what we call biopsy. So those are the three things that falls on that triple assessment that are carried out, for breast cancer. So we do all of these three just to be sure that the lump or the growth that has happened is not a malignant growth, and to be dealt with, accordingly. Now, for self-breast examination, like I said, most lumps, within the body, when they happen, most of them are actually benign. However, we shouldn't just take it at that. We should go, for essential checks. Who should do self-breast examination? Everybody, most especially the females, should be doing this. The males, like I said, our risk is also, even though low, 3 to 5%, but it is also possible. So we shouldn't just say, it's just women alone, so we don't need to do anything. So when should self-breast examination be done? At least every month is important for us to do that. For our ladies who are premenopausal, it is advised that mid-cycle, that is, if you finish your menses today, for example, if your menses starts today, maybe you use 4 days to have your menses. So between day 1 and day 4, by day 4, or let's say day 7 is when you finish your menses. By that day 7, you finished your menses. Now, it depends on how many day cycle you have. So for somebody who has a 25-day cycle, if the first 7 days is when you have your menses, it means the next 7 days, which is going to be, or the next 5 days, which is going to be the 12th day, is your mid-cycle. So around that time, which is your mid-cycle, because your cycle period, is 24 days. If it is 28 days, day 14 from your last menstrual period, the day of your last menstrual period, the first day, that's when you start counting. So middle of that is when it is most preferred, to do the self-breast examination. And for postmenopausal ladies, it is advisable to do it anytime. And the reason is because, around, menstruation period, the breast sometimes will be engorged and all that. So if you do it around that time, you may not really, those changes may actually be premenstrual. So it may not really be reflective, true reflection of, how you normally feel your breast to be. So where in doing self-breast examination, it is advisable that we stand in front, of the mirror, lift up our hands, use our hand, especially the edge of our hand, to go in circular motion. We divide the breast into 4 quadrants: the upper quadrant, lower quadrant, the outer, inner. So that's 4 quadrants. So upper, lower, outer, inner. So we start from the upper outer quadrant, we go to the upper inner quadrant, we go to the lower inner quadrant, and we go to the lower outer quadrant. So that way, in cycle, we check, is there anything? We check, first thing when we put up our hand is to check the shape. Has it changed? Is there any new changes, between what it was last month and now? There's no changes. If you lift up your hand and you notice, oh, there's a wrinkling of the skin which wasn't there before, then we shouldn't just keep quiet. Or we notice, oh, something is happening. It wasn't there before, then we shouldn't keep quiet. So basically, this is how it is done. For those of us who are married, husbands can examine their wives, and vice versa too, at home, because of time. Now, so that is self-breast examination. In the UK, once you cross the age of 50, you'll be told to do what we call mammogram. At least once in 3 years, you'll be doing mammogram. So this is imaging of the breast, just to be sure that you do not have any lumps, which self-breast examination or even you yourself might not have picked up. And this continues until the age of 70 years. And after then, if you still want to request for mammogram, you can request that through your GP, but you normally start at the age of 50. However, some women would be told to start their own screening earlier. And the reason why that has happened is because possibly there's any family history of breast cancer, or any other cancers, maybe, or genetics. Maybe in the family, they've done some genetic tests and some genetic counseling has been carried out, and it's been said that, oh, they have a high risk for this. Please make sure. So for those women, they may be asked, to start their own screening as early as age 40, and some may even start at as early as age 25 and above. May start their own screening, and it shouldn't just be mammogram. Some even they need to do MRI because of the type of because breast cancer as a disease itself is not just one disease, it's many diseases. Many, and when I say many, like over 100 different types. I'm not really exaggerating, but oncologists would appreciate what I'm saying better, because no two people are the same in terms of diagnosis and in terms of management and in terms of treatment outcome that they are going to have in managing them. Now, for cervical cancer, like I said, the reason why we are dwelling on this is because it is commoner back home. Now we know that human papilloma virus is there's in over 99% cases of cervical cancer, it is caused by human papilloma virus. Now, this human papilloma virus, there are different phenotypes, but there are some phenotypes. Some phenotypes are more specific, towards causing cervical cancer, and those are type 16 and 18, 31, 33, 41, 47. So those are the types that can cause cervical cancer. We have type 6 and 11, which of human papilloma virus phenotype, which also called genital warts. So the fact that you have human papilloma virus does not mean, what you need to find out is what phenotype do you have. If it is type 6 and 11, then it may cause genital warts. Otherwise, if it is 16 and 18, which are the commonest phenotypes, it may cause cervical cancer. And what we need to know with the human papilloma virus as a causation of cervical cancer is that it's usually caught, from sexual activities, and that is why most things that revolve around sexual activities, would are where you find the causative or predisposing factors for cervical cancers. And some of the factors are what have been listed here. Early coitus means, for a lady who started, having sexual intercourse at a very early age, may be much more predisposed, towards development of cervical cancer than others. Or somebody who has multiple sexual partners, not being faithful, sleeping with, different people, can cause, spread of the malignant phenotype human papilloma virus and lead to the development of this disease. Also, is smoking is being linked to that. Birth control pills is also linked to that. Also, is lack of screening. I know in the UK from age 25, you're going to be sent, for what we call Papa Nicolau smear, Pap smear, age 25 and above. It is encouraged that we do this. In some countries, for example, Australia, they have massive, screening of their population. And it is being touted that, in fact, cervical cancer globally might be the first cancer that we are going to eliminate completely. In Australia, for example, now, they've driven the incidence of cervical cancer down remarkably. And it is because of their, aggressive, screening that they've been carrying out. So with Pap smear, if it is carried out and it's noted that there is something found abnormal, among the cells that have been collected, you may be asked to do further tests, such as HPV DNA. If the HPV DNA is positive, they might ask you to do what we call colposcopy, which is a much more invasive test, looking under, asking you to come. They will look under the camera, and be sure that the cells, that are there, are not. They will be staining those cells with some, special stains, such as Lugos, iodine, just to find out, what's happening. Is this these cells, are they malignant or not? And if you do the Pap smear, the cells that have been isolated are fine, no problem, then another 3 to 5 years you'll be called again, for another one. And that's how, the screening is carried out. This is what, is lacking back home in Nigeria, that we do not have. The other thing I need to mention about cervical cancer is that it is now very largely preventable, because we have vaccines which can actually act against the human papilloma virus. So we have what we call the divalent vaccines, and we have the quadrivalent vaccines. The divalent vaccines are the ones that are active against just 2 malignant phenotypes, type 16 and 18. The quadrivalent vaccines are the ones that are active against type 6, 11, 16, 18. So it means that anyone who has had the quadrivalent vaccines, would largely not have, genital warts or, cervical cancer. I need to let us know, the human papilloma virus does not only cause cancer of the cervix, it can cause cancer of the, it's also implicated in cancer of the anus. It can also cause cancer of the penis. It's also been implicated in cancer of the mouth, especially the throat, oropharyngeal cancers. So these are, all the various areas that it has been implicated. For the throat, I know some of us human papilloma virus, how come? Risky, sexual practices, fellatio, cunnilingus, in such instances, you have, these viruses, transmitted, and it's been implicated, in oropharyngeal cancers. So these vaccines that I talked about, it's largely given to boys, from age 9 to I think within the UK from age 9 to 14 or 15. So boys and girls. So it's advisable that when they are offered they should actually have it, because in those countries where they have, large screening and large vaccination, they are eliminating cervical cancer because it is largely preventable. It can be prevented. We know the cause, 99% of cases is HPV, and we have vaccines that can be taken against that. So prevention strategies for cervical cancer, reduce high-risk exposure practices, screening, which I talked about, pap smear, then HPV vaccination. So HPV vaccination is actually more effective in those who have not been exposed to sexual practices, and that is why the younger age group, between age 9 to 14, are targeted. So for those of us who have been exposed to sex, even though there are some trials and researches these days that are showing that you can actually give it to men up to age 40, but I don't think that has been adopted, nationwide under the NHS. For prostate cancer, it is cancer of the men. The prostate gland is the gland that is beneath our bladder. The bladder is the storage house of our urine before it goes out through our urethra and outside through the penis of males. Now, beneath our bladder is where we have the prostate gland. So these glands can become enlarged, and they normally become enlarged, in elderly people. And that is why we, Africans, it is much more common among us Africans, Afro-Caribbeans, Afro-Americans, much more commoner among them. We do not know. So, some of these have been linked to, either our inherent genetics, and other factors. But it's commoner among Afro-Caribbean people. So how do we screen for this? Is by undergoing what we call PSA test, prostate specific antigen test. From age 50, I would say that it's your own course if you request to know your PSA. Routinely, it is not being done now, but we can request it. Speak to our GP. Please, I want to just see my PSA. The normal figure is between 0 to 4 nanogram per mils. Even though PSA can be affected by if you have just had sexual intercourse, for example, or you have prostatitis, or you have maneuver of the prostates. Maybe you have a catheter passed or something. Those can influence PSA reading. And that is why if you are going to do PSA, it's advisable to abstain from sexual practices some days before you go and have the blood test, so that you can have an accurate reading of that PSA, which should be between 0 and 4. If it is higher, you should be worried. But if you have symptoms, what are the symptoms that we can have, from prostate cancer? You have difficulty, with urinating, or you're urinating much more frequently than used to be, or the stream is very weak, or you're even, before you get there, it's already coming out, and it wasn't there before, So all these symptoms, dysuria, urinary frequency, urinary urgency, or urge incontinence, all this, we shouldn't relax. Sometimes it may just be what we call BPH, benign prostate hyperplasia, just mild enlargement of the prostate. Might be because it's just like you have a tap, and that tap, you have something that on the neck of the tap. If that mass enlarges, it can compress the pipe, and the tap will not flow as it should flow. And that is why,
Dr. Vidwan, by the way, I think it stops major strategies, and we should be rounding up as well.
Now, okay. So finally is that the general prevention strategy that we mentioned: don't use tobacco, protect the skin from the sun. UV absorbers cream are largely available, and it's always been encouraged, for us to use it, on ourselves, on our children, especially when we know that they are going to be exposed to the sun, or we are visiting countries that have, sun in abundance. If eating healthy diets, maintaining healthy weight, and physically active, practicing safe, avoiding risky behaviors, getting immunized. All these, are general prevention strategies that can help towards the prevention of cancer We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us understand it much more than the way it has been delivered. And we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala safeguard us from deadly and terrible diseases. And we pray Allah not make it a fitna that would beyond us, so that would be a source of our not attaining his pleasure in our akhirah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullahu khairan, Dr. Ahmed, for that beautiful presentation. I was wondering how you were going to present cancer to lay people that will make it understandable to people, but you did a fantastic job. And I'm sure we've all benefited, and I've learned a lot. Even me as a doctor, I've learned a lot from his presentation. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from this disease, and our families that are affected, Muslims that are affected, non-Muslims that are affected. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant them cure and then use it as a form of cleansing of their sins, inshallah. I'm sure there are questions, inshallah. So we have another 15-20 minutes for questions. If you have any questions, as usual, please raise your hands, inshallah, using the raise hand function on Zoom. If you prefer to type it on the chat area, inshallah, we'll pick it up. For those of us on YouTube, inshallah, if you use the chat area to ask your question as well, we'll try to pick it up. This is your opportunity to ask those questions that you're not too sure of. We have a doctor here, inshallah, who is a specialist in cancer. So please avail yourself of the opportunity, inshallah. Whilst we are waiting for that, there are a few announcements. I should have informed the technical crew. If we get up the poster, some of the posters, inshallah, inshallah, would announce the youth conference coming up as well. And but before we go, I think there's a question on the chat area. Maybe we should start with that. What is normal when it comes to self-breast examination?
Now, okay, if I may quickly answer that. So each female, knows, how your body is, how your breast is, right from when, it started appearing, and once, it's fully grown, this is how my breast is. Even for women too, this is how it is. So how it is assumed to be the norm. And for husbands to wives, we should know this is how my wife's breast is. So if anything that now deviates from that, from monthly self-breast examination, is what should alarm us. Either there's wrinkling of the skin, or is dimpling inside, or there's a lump that you can feel, or you're feeling unease that you can't really explain it, because sometimes it may just, some breast cancers, like the lobular breast cancers, for example, even if you do mammogram, you may not really see anything on mammogram, until you do special types of imaging before you're able to really detect. So, wallahu alam.
Yeah, Jazakallah Khan. I think that's absolutely important. Just to add a bit more to what Doctor already explained to us. I mean, some women have very lumpy breasts. It's not all lump that are breast, cancer or tumor. Like he said, your breast. Some of the breasts are lumpy. It doesn't mean it is actually something abnormal. So learn your breast, how your breast feels. Your husband should know how your breast feels, and you should know how your husband's breast feels as well. So it's very important we know what is normal. So anything that if there's any doubt at any point, and because there's a tendency for us as sisters, being shy to get to our GP, and alhamdulillah, these days, if you ask for a female GP, it's there for you as well. So there's no reason to be shy, or it's better to be safe than sorry. So if there's any doubt, get it checked. That would be my own message to you, inshallah. There are a few questions here, the long ones. Can you please speak to or reassure people that may be concerned that exposure to ionization from mammograms may reportedly increase the risk of breast cancer?
Oh, okay. Now, Jazakumullah khairan for that wonderful question. You see, the amount of radiation that is from mammogram is very, very small. I think it's less than 0.1 centigrade or so. So it's very, very minimal. So we shouldn't be worried that because if I'm doing mammogram, maybe I'll develop breast cancer in the long run. No, the amount is very, very small. And in fact, you see, there is what we call in radiation oncology. There's what we call hormetic effects of radiation. What that means is that there are some goodness that radiation itself can do. It is said that exposure to some minimal amount of radiation sometimes can even be good for the body. Yes. So I'm not saying that one should unnecessarily, expose oneself, to radiation. It depends on, the amount that you're exposed to, the interval, of exposure to that radiation, and your inherent susceptibility, towards the development of cancer. So mammogram or chest X-ray or CT, wouldn't wouldn't increase the risks, of us. The amount of radiation that they're talking about are the ones that are very high, from radiation machines or, from astronauts who go into spaces, for example. The radiations outside the Earth are very, very high, very, very high. So the risk of those ones, coming down with one form of malignancy or the other, like blood cancers and all that, is higher, and same is, for people who frequently fly. Some people have always been saying, oh, maybe because I fly frequently, hope my exposure to, of course, when you fly, most times your exposure to radiation is higher than somebody who is not a frequent flyer. But those amounts are still not higher enough as to get us worried. And that's what Allah protect us.
I mean, there's a question here that some of those UV sunscreen that you suggested that people should use when they are exposing themselves to sunlight, could form a film over the skin, and when you do ablution, the water doesn't permeate. And I'm not sure if you're an expert when it comes to creams. Do you have any specific ones that you recommend?
I know that there are some that are actually water soluble. There are some, not all of them. Not all of them. I can possibly get the list, but I don't have them right now.
No, I don't know of any as well. So inshallah, but that we could find out and then let us know inshallah if we do get it. There's another question which I think I was going to ask as well. Is it advisable for us to actually have the cervical screening? Especially the sisters may argue that I only have one husband, I don't sleep around, because as you mentioned, the risk factors for it is people who have multiple partners. I've only got one partner. Why should I be going for my cervical screening? That's number one. Number two, with regards to our kids getting that HPV vaccine, I know you already answered this question, but I think let's make it very clear, because this is one of the topical questions that parents ask. My son or my daughter is a virgin. She's not going to be having, sex before she gets married. Well, what's the point of getting the HPV vaccine? How can you explain to these parents if this is necessary or not? So those two questions, please.
Okay, now, Bismillah, maybe starting from the last one. In terms of for the vaccination, I would say that what we know today is that at least HPV, human papilloma virus, in over 90% of cases is what is responsible, or 99% of cases, what is responsible for cervical cancer. Now, for the disease to happen, it is not just in one person, it's one person to the other. In some instances, you may have the development of cervical cancer. Maybe that's even not HPV related, but they are extremely, extremely rare. Extremely, extremely rare. Now, because the prevalence is very high, we know ourselves, but the society, of course, I do not know who my child is going to marry, for example, maybe somebody in the days of Jahiliyyah that has, indulged in, all sorts, and now he's now a very good Muslim, a very good brother, mashallah, and that is who my, daughter is going to marry. So how do we, justify that in that situation? And the fact that globally, we know this disease we can eliminate it completely if we all get vaccinated. There's what called herd immunity. Herd immunity is if a larger bulk of the population, is getting the vaccine, it will get to a point whereby even for those who do not, get vaccinated, those people would have, form a shield, and protect even those ones. But we are not at that point yet, especially, for our folks back home in Nigeria, where cervical cancer is still, you see people coming stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, when it is not curable again. That is when they are being diagnosed and picked up. Lots of, I finished my training in Abuja, and we see lots, of women, Muslim women. We are not saying that it is because they are promiscuous, that was why it may not be a fault of theirs, it may be, it just happened, and then they had it. So if we know it is preventable as much as possible, I think as Muslims, we shouldn't, in as much as the agents, what they use to, the component of the vaccine, if it is not haram, which we know it is not, then we shouldn't have any hesitation to have it so that we can eradicate this scourge. Wallahu alam. Then, with respect to cervical screening, I think as much as possible, you see, it is also, part of, upholding goodness, not just for ourselves, but for the community. I can understand sometimes, most of us feel, I know I'm faithful to my husband alone, and is there any need for me to have it? It is good for us to be screened, even if it is just once. We get screened, and that is fine. We can, decline, subsequently, even though I'm not advising that anyway. As an health worker, as a physician, the advice would be to do it. Some of these things, we always assume that, things are fine, things are good, until sometimes you check things out and you find out that, this is not the way I thought it is. So I'm not saying that, we might have it, but I would, it's encouraged, that we do it. Yeah, that's what I'm.
Yeah, and the cervical screening itself is done by,
female.
No, 100%, or yes, done by female.
Yeah.
It's just taking a sample. That's all. Within 10 minutes, you're done. It's once every 3 years, or depending on your age. So why don't? Yeah, it's not really something that. And Islamically, there's not. Prevention is better than cure. This is what Islam even promotes as well. So, it's better to be safe than sorry. Cancer is serious, May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from it, inshallah.
Yeah. Sorry. Additionally, there are, in fact, because of the sensitivity of cervical screening, now there are some methods which we call cell sampling methods, which is being introduced. I know in South Africa it was being trialed, in Australia too, but I'm not sure if it is here in the UK. I'm not sure, but it's something that can also be requested. So in the self-sampling method, you request for the material to be sent to you. You take the sample and then send back. But I don't think it's in the NHS yet. But some countries already started that. So, but this is what we have right now, and mashallah, let us make use of the opportunity. Unlike our folks back home, people don't have such an opportunity. If you want to do cervical screening, you have to take the initiative yourself. Okay, I want to go and do cervical cancer screening. And of course, you are going to pay out of pocket. Even the vaccines you are talking about, which is free here, you are going to pay out of pocket to do that in Nigeria. So while we have the opportunity, why not let us utilize them?
Jazakumullah khair. I don't think we have any more questions on the chat area. I can't see anything on YouTube either. No hands up. Anyone, any further questions, inshallah? Any further clarifications before we end today's session? Okay, so whilst we're waiting for any further questions, I think we've got an announcement to make. So as we've been saying, our youth conference, inshallah, is coming up on the weekend, the 16th to 18th. 16th to 18th of December, inshallah. That will be our winter conference. As you can see the poster, the theme for this year would be the ultimate purpose, and it's meant for children from the age of 12 up to 25, 26. Join us, inshallah. We have great presentations, lectures, workshops, games, quizzes, inshallah, to keep us busy during that weekend. It's usually a very fun weekend. We have fantastic speakers and youth workers that will be coming to talk to us. Please do register. The registration is open now. We'll be sending that out over the next 24 hours or so. Please look out for it. Register yourselves, register your children, or ask them to register themselves. They are big boys and girls now. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to preserve our life till then, inshallah. I'm just going to check one more time if there are any questions in the chat area. I hope everyone can hear me clearly. Apparently, my audio is a bit low. I'll shout at the top of my voice. I'm just checking if there are any hands up. Oh, there is one hand up. Can you unmute yourself and ask your question, please? Fola Sayo.
Yeah.
Naam.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I'm very sorry, my question is not based on cancer, please. But I just want to ask, if one is feeling pain on a foot, I don't remember the name of they call it one name, at the back of the foot. Can you hear me, please?
Yes.
I'm so sorry, it's not based on cancer, but I just want to know, is there anything that can be done on that?
Naam,
to relieve from the pain.
So the pain on the back of your foot, is there anything to be done to help with this pain?
Yeah.
Naam, doctor.
Now, okay, I was expecting you answer it. You are more qualified
I'm so
than
sorry.
me.
That's fine. Oh, I think that's a very difficult one. It's a very difficult one. There are so many things you need to ask, you need to examine. There are so many possible causes of that pain, and it's difficult to actually give a treatment to something you're not too sure of. What I would advise, though, that it depends on how long this has been going on for. Maybe you need ice pack, have you had any injury there? Perhaps I think the best and the safest thing to do is to contact your GP. I know it's difficult getting an appointment with your GP, but I'm hoping if you're persistent, inshallah, you'll be able to get an appointment. They will speak to you, ask more, personal questions, and then examine, and then they can then prefer some sort of treatment for you, inshallah.
All right. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Abdul Hakim Yusuf, can you unmute yourself and ask a question, please?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Jazakumullah khair. So the question is already there, but you didn't pick it up. Is that can breast pain be a sign of breast cancer?
No.
Oh, okay. Now, yeah. So yeah, a sort. Okay. Can you hear me?
No. Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. Now, so now, Jazakumullah khairan, Prof, for the question. So for a pain, tenderness, it will not directly, most times, tenderness within the breast, most times are usually, due to benign causes, which means, if you're having a pain within the breast, most times, like 8 or 9 out of 10, most likely be maybe something that is benign, maybe a lump that is not cancerous most times. However, fibroadenoma, most times that's how it comes. We feel some tenderness, and once it's checked out, to be found out to just be a benign growth that wouldn't do anything. However, we should still have it checked through our GP. Pain that wasn't there before, all of a sudden it just started, and despite that we're having that pain, we can't feel any mass. Let's still, have it checked out, by the GP, because like I said, breast cancers are different types. So, and some have very unusual behavior and characteristics.
Jazakumullahu khairan, and for the lecture too.
Wayakum, sir. Okay, I saw that there's another question, Dr. Majid. Is it true that husbands soaking wives' breast reduce breast cancer? Well, I know what we know is that women who breastfeed, their children, that has been seen in some studies that they actually is actually protective against the development of breast cancer. It does not mean that because a woman has breastfed a child or a children that the woman will not have breast cancer. No, yeah, because of course I've seen so many ladies who even carried out exclusive breastfeeding and they still had breast cancer, because there are numerous other factors which would have contributed to the development of that cancer. So, but sucking of breasts, as a sexual practice, people say it, but there is no scientific backup for that it will reduce the development of breast cancer. But what we know is that exclusive breastfeeding actually is protective towards the development of breast cancer. Wallahu alam.
Have you checked that? Do you have any personal questions sent to you, or
No.
or
I
inshallah?
don't think so.
I think we'll end it today. We'll end it at this point, inshallah. Alhamdulillah, it's been a very, very useful session, inshallah. Inshallah, every now and then we'll bring in specialists, health talk, and few other areas as well, just to spice up the discussion. Because in Islam, as we know, we look after ourselves in this world, and we look after our akhirah as well. So we try to mix things up, inshallah. I'm sure you want to go for part 2 of this. There are still so many areas of cancer that we've not discussed today. Inshallah, hopefully doctor would have some time to spare with us in future to talk about chemotherapy, because today there is that myth that if somebody has cancer and chemotherapy have been suggested, it means that it is like a death warrant that has been issued. So all those myths, we need to explain to people what chemotherapy is, what are the advancement we've had in chemotherapy these days. It's the same thing as it was 10, 20 years ago. So inshallah, there are still so many things we could talk about, and we ask Allah to preserve our life to this whenever that would be, inshallah. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. If you want to support our programs and our lectures and all that, please do donate generously. We have our accounts, inshallah. I think our accounts will be posted on the screen now. Donate generously. If you have any questions, if you want to join our group, our WhatsApp group for further information, it will be posted on the chat area as well. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept this from us as act of worship. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
عملوا بما كسبوا لهم شراب من حميم وعذاب أليم بما كانوا يكفرون قل أندعو من دون الله ما لا ينفعنا ولا يضرنا ونرد على أعقابنا بعد إذ هدانا الله كالذي استهوته الشياطين في الأرض حيران له أصحاب يدعونه إلى الهدى ائتنا قل إن هدى الله هو الهدى وأمرنا لنسلم لرب العالمين وأن أقيموا الصلاة واتقوه وهو الذي إليه تحشرون وهو الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بالحق ويوم يقول كن فيكون قوله الحق وله الملك يوم ينفخ في الصور عالم الغيب والشهادة وهو الحكيم الخبير وإذ قال إبراهيم لأبيه آزر أتتخذ أصناما آلهة إني أراك وقومك في ضلال مبين وكذلك نري إبراهيم ملكوت السماوات والأرض وليكون من الموقنين فلما جن عليه الليل رأى كوكبا قال هذا ربي فلما أفل قال لا أحب الآفلين فلما رأى القمر بازغا قال هذا ربي فلما أفل قال لئن لم يهدني ربي لأكونن من القوم